I go to these places that are around here and they might be a 2-3 hour drive away, right? And I have a car service pick me up at my house at 5 a.m. in a brand new Suburban, right? And I get in there with a couple people that work for me and we drive down and we stop and we eat, 4-star, 5-star lunch, and we have a 5-star dinner on the way back. And I always tell people who want to come with me and see what this is like. I always tell them the same thing. And I tell it to myself too. But when we're driving out of there at night and we just looked at 50 houses or 30 houses, 40 houses, whatever it was, between drive-bys and walking through and doing scopes, when we're driving back after literally a 15, 16-hour day, and we just went to houses where there's no plumbing and people flush the toilet and it just goes into the bottom underneath, and there's 5 kids running around the house who are in soiled diapers because they can't afford anything. And I have clients that are looking to buy those houses. So we're doing walkthroughs and we're talking to people who have no roof on their house and water's pouring in and there's mold, black mold growing on the walls and on the ceilings. And I tell the people I'm with, I say, listen, we're leaving here. We're driving out of here in a $100,000 car. We're going to stop and have a $600 dinner. Just remember, those people that we just left are still in that situation. You're going to go home tonight. You're going to shower. You're going to get in your pajamas. You're going to turn on your 60-inch plasma screen TV and get in a nice clean bed and turn the air conditioning on or turn the heat on. And those people that we just left, they're not. They're going to wake up tomorrow and they're still going to be in that crappy situation. And they're going to live in that crap situation every single day until someone comes in there and helps them.
Welcome to another episode of Affordable Housing and Real Estate Investing. And guys, I have not been more excited for a podcast conversation for probably since I started this podcast, because I finally found a guy that really, truly walks the walk, and he helps other people remove the fear from their investment journey. And I think that is such an important characteristic or trait, whatever you want to call it, but everybody needs someone like Rhett in their lives. So Rhett Wisman, welcome to the show, man. How are you doing today?
Ken, I'm fired up to be here, man. I really am. And, we talked about doing this a couple days ago, and I've been thinking about it for a couple days. There's so much good stuff I want to talk about and get out in the open. And I know that we can talk about a broad range of topics, ranging from the smallest and entry-level real estate to the most complex and huge institutional projects. So I'm really excited for today.
Man, well, I know you as the Section 8 guy, and I've heard countless stories from other folks and testimonials about how you've been able to help other investors get started. But let's just get into your story a little bit, Rhett. Who was Rhett, and how did you even get into real estate in the first place, man?
Yeah. So Kent, my story goes back a while. I started really, really young in this. I started in high school. My dad owned a construction company. So I was always at jobs and I was watching these things get built, and I was watching subcontractors work and contractors work. And I loved it. And I enjoyed being a part of it. I would partner on projects with him. And then as soon as I went to college, I went to school at Vanderbilt where I played baseball. I couldn't be in the fold as much. I couldn't do flips when I'm from Boston originally, and now I'm 1,200 miles away. I need something more passive. So while I'm in school and while I'm out of school, as soon as I graduate from Vanderbilt and I'm playing professional baseball, which I did for 6 years, constantly traveling, I was just building large portfolios. And because I was in the Southeast, I wanted to build the portfolios relatively close to where I was living. And I was in Nashville at the time, where Vanderbilt is. So I looked at markets all around me in Nashville, and there are some really advantageous states where property values are low and landlord-tenant laws are in the favor of the landlord. And there were just a lot of things that checked a lot of boxes, Kent, as a real estate investor. So I started buying properties in Kentucky and Mississippi and Alabama and Georgia and everywhere that I could around here to find the places that worked, to find what didn't work, and to learn this thing firsthand and make the mistakes. And Ken, I've made mistakes worth well into the 7 digits. And now I try and help other people avoid those mistakes.
Man, 7-figure mistakes. And that was probably a little scary for you, man. But I'm sure without those mistakes, you would never become the person that you are today with the success that you have. So you've been in so many markets. Tell us a little bit about your own portfolio and what you have done for your clients so far. Because I've heard the numbers first on Tuesday and I was blown away, man.
Yeah. So every year we do anywhere from 350 in a slow year to up to 700 or 800 units in just Section 8 alone. And I started doing Section 8 before it was cool, before the influencers were out there and before it was on TikTok and Instagram. I was doing Section 8, Kent, when people were like, you are insane. You're out of your mind. And I heard it as a young guy. The houses are never going to appreciate. Tenants are going to destroy your houses. What are you doing? And I had to find a way to make money, Kent, and buying properties for 15, 20 grand. What I thought was, okay, if I buy a house for $20,000, who's going to live here? What kind of income of the person that lives here is going to be able to afford the rent that I want to charge? And what I found was, and I know this is a statistic that we use in developments all the time, Kent, but what is the average median income or average mean income in this area? And when I pull those numbers up and that number is 20,000 a year or 30,000 a year, I can't charge market rent for these units. So over the last 13, 14 years, we have done, between my own portfolio and those for clients, we've done close to about 3,000 Section 8 units. So that's a lot of people that we've taken out of housing projects, shelters, off the streets, and provided with housing in areas that are extremely distressed, extremely high poverty, very low GDPs, and extremely underserved, whether it be in law enforcement, medical care, job growth, you name it. Those are the areas that we focus on.
Man, I usually wait till the end of the show to do this, right? But man, thank you so much for what you do. Because 3,000 homes, that's no small feat. Regardless if that's your own personal portfolio or through helping clients, I think it's even more impressive because it takes a tremendous amount of patience to help that many people through their emotional worries. And I remember, man, when you were in Boston, I grew up in Boston. I worked as the EMT in the North Shore of Boston, in Malden, Everett, Revere, and I made like $13 an hour. And I realized that after 5 years of doing that job, I can't stay in that job. I want to provide a better financial future for my family. So I figured, how can I possibly impact more people at a greater scale? And I found that through housing, and I admire what you're doing. And frankly, I look up to what you're doing, Rhett, because you're doing exactly what I wanted to do, impacting, providing a great future for so many people. So thank you so much for what you do, because without people like you, seriously, I would have never had the home I grew up in.
Yeah, and Kent, of course, at this point, it's like second nature to me. But I have to say, it's such a team situation. And being a professional athlete for 6 years, playing at the highest levels at Vanderbilt, we won a national championship, Division I national championship in 2014. We went back to the national championship in 2015. We've won SEC. I've won SEC, Southeastern Conference championships, titles. We set the all-time record for SEC wins in 2013. What I'm getting at is I know how to be on a team, and that's everything I do in my life. I structure around a team, and we can't do it without a team. And the people on my team, the realtors, the contractors, the management companies, the lenders, the insurance companies, the title companies, the attorneys, I mean, everybody we use, they all play such a huge part in this. And when you're doing it at such a large scale, it consumes you. I tell you what, I work all day. And when I'm not working, I'm thinking about this. And I get text messages, I get voice messages at like 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning sometimes from my management company, from my contractors about houses. And I answer them because I'm thinking about them too. And, I'll get emails at 5, 6 o'clock in the morning from contractors of photos of a house or a question that somebody was thinking about, whether it be a management company or whether it be a realtor, whatever it is. Because everyone's just constantly, they're trying to get more units out. They're trying to put more people in houses. They're trying to find better ways to speed this up so that we can work more efficiently with Section 8. Because as you know, Kent, you focus in government subsidies and in affordable housing. And you and I can get things done about 100 times faster when they're not involved. But at one point, we have to bring them in, right? Because they're the ones that are cutting the checks. They're the ones that are paying. So how can we get this process? How can we get this single mother with 4 kids, or this single mother with 2 kids, or this single dad who has 2 kids and a young mom who just passed away, who was killed in a violent crime, walking down the street, who gets hit with a stray bullet? I mean, we have that every single month. So how can we help them get from the housing project, get from the abusive shelter, get from literally underneath a bridge sometimes, or in a shanty village? How do we get them into one of our units faster? And what things can we do to be proactive, so by the time Section 8 gets involved, their involvement is minimal, so we can get this person on a better track to success and in a more comfortable situation faster?
Man, spoken like a true champion. Man, this is why I'm telling all of the listeners right now, this is why I was so excited. Not only do you get to hear the words of a championship player on a championship team, because there is a tremendous amount of consistency that you have to practice. And I think that's what I'm most impressed with you, Rhett. It's because you could have stopped this a long time ago. You could have said, I have enough. I don't need to go help any people. I'm good. But hearing from you about the person, the single mom that you want to help get out of the shelter and put in one of these homes, that's what keeps you going. And frankly, for everybody that's listening right now, focus on the person that you want to help. Picture that woman that you get to walk into a beautiful home that you renovated, and you're providing a safe roof over their heads, and you're frankly literally changing their lives of their families and their children. I hope this was what keeps everybody going and just takes a little bit of inspiration from Rhett today. Well, Rhett, you just mentioned a few things about the people that you're able to help. Can you help us debunk some of the myths associated with affordable housing? Because all we hear sometimes are just guns, drugs, drama. Help us debunk some of those myths based on your experience so far.
Yeah. And Kent, we'll dive into that. I have to comment on one thing that you said, which I loved. And that was, you don't have to keep helping people. You've got it. You don't need it anymore. And it brings up one of my favorite things. And one of my favorite things is when people say it's a troll, which is my favorite troll, whether it's on a YouTube video or an Instagram video. And I see it. It's for everybody that does mentorships or coaching or helps other people. It's, well, if they're so successful, how come they help other people do it? And it's my favorite thing that people say, because it's so stupid. It's so moronic, because look at the people who are most successful, right? And you as well. And we've talked about your mentor. You don't just wake up one morning and all of a sudden you have a big real estate portfolio and you're successful. Someone always helps you get there. So I've thrown so much money down the toilet because with Section 8, I didn't have someone helping me. With the construction, absolutely. With property management, absolutely. With general business, 100%. I've had people there every single step of the way. But with Section 8, I've lost so much money because I didn't know what I was doing, right? So now I'm just trying to help other people make it easier. Just don't lose as much money, right? And you can create a system, which we've done, to help people do that. But I just had to comment on that because that's the funniest thing that I've ever heard. And some of the most successful people I know help other people who then become extremely successful. So I just love that. And you reminded me of that. But so let's get into Section 8. So some debunking the myths and the stigmas around Section 8 are the biggest adversary, right, to a lot of people, mom and pops and young investors who want to get into this. But it's also the thing that helps us out the most because it limits our competition so significantly. And because you deal with a lot of institutional money, institutional investors, institutional debt and equity on the big development side. We don't want those big fish playing in the affordable housing ponds because they bring in billions and then all of a sudden it dries things up. And our rate of return, our MOICs, all of the cash on cash returns, our caps, they go down when institutional money comes in. So we love it because it stays in a more retail investor space, which we love. Now, let's talk about some of those myths. Number one, a Section 8 tenant will come in and destroy your unit and ruin it. That's by far the most cliche and it's the most popular of the myths. Now, what a lot of people don't understand is if you have a Section 8 tenant that comes in on a housing choice voucher and they destroy your unit, You make one phone call to their caseworker, they will send somebody down, look at the house, and they will start the process to take that voucher away from that person. Once they lose that voucher because they destroyed a unit, they will never get it back. So it's very different than project-based vouchers, which on a project-based voucher, that voucher stays with the individual unit. So what I like to compare it to is you have a unit and that voucher is attached to that unit. So whoever moves into that unit, that voucher then belongs to them. But as soon as they leave, the voucher stays. So in that instance, if they come in there and they tear that place up, when they leave, it doesn't matter because the next person that moves in there, they still get the voucher. With the single family housing choice voucher program that we specify most of our clients to work in, the voucher moves with the tenant. So if the tenant moves to 123 Maple Street, the voucher goes with them to 123 Maple Street. If they leave and go to 789 Maple Street, they bring that voucher with them to 789 Maple Street. As soon as they destroy one of those units, they lose that voucher forever and they can never rent underneath the Section 8 program again. That is myth number one. And we don't deal with that rarely ever. We do hundreds of properties a year. We might have one or two instances where we face something like that. It's extremely, extremely low, under 1%, because a lot of these people, they don't want to lose that voucher, Ken. The second myth that is the most popular is they're going to bring in guns, drugs, booze, and they're going to turn your house into a frat house on steroids, trap house, if you will. So what happens is once a year, sometimes twice a year, sometimes once every 18 months, Section 8 will do a random inspection on our units. And if they come in and they see anything that is illegal, anything nefarious, they will write that up and put the tenant at risk of losing their voucher. So these inspections are actually great for both the tenant and the owner. They make sure that nothing bad is going on at the unit. There's not 10 pounds of drugs sitting on the counter. There's not guns in the open where kids can grab them. There's no excessive damage done to the units. But it also holds us as owners accountable to make sure that we are continuing to provide a high standard of living for our tenants. So if a Section 8 tenant goes in there, and I've had this before, Kent, and I know I'm going off on a tangent here, but there's just so much going on. So we've had instances when I first started doing this where a Section 8 inspector goes out to a house doing a yearly inspection. There's no running water. And we get a call and say, hey, there's no running water. There's been no running water there for a month. And we're up in arms saying, what do you mean there's no running water there? And the inspector says, well, the Section 8 tenant didn't want to get in trouble. They had an issue with the water line about 30 days ago. They didn't want to call because they didn't want to risk losing their voucher. And it's so incredibly sad because it's not at all their problem. That's our fault. That's on us. We'll fix that, but we didn't know. So those inspections are great because they make sure that we are being held accountable, that we are keeping that unit up to a very high standard as well. So those are the two biggest myths, and there are things in place to make sure that you don't have to deal with the falsehoods that are associated with those myths.
Man, I'm so glad you went through that, Rhett, because if I could just add a little color to your first myth of people not wanting to lose their vouchers. Guys, I might have told you some of the story before, but my mom waited 3.5 years before she got her unit. When I was living in that apartment building, it was a 7-year wait list. Some years they stopped taking any more people on a wait list. Now I live in San Diego County. I literally went to the housing authority myself and I asked them how long the wait list is. 12 to 15 years in San Diego. Imagine you're a single mom trying to get out of the hood and you just had a kid. Like 12 to 15 years. That's way too late. So I love the word you brought up, and that word is accountability, because I'm not really aware of any other exit strategy where there's more accountability on all sides from the tenant and the landlord perspective, because the tenant has to agree and uphold their end of the bargain. Now, as a landlord, you can probably educate them a little bit because not everybody will know, like, hey, it's a privilege to have a voucher. You might have to educate them a little bit, like, hey, if you don't take care of it, you might lose your voucher. You might still have to do some education there. That's okay. But at least on the landlord side, you know someone's checking on the home every single year, at least, to make sure that it's being upkept. Because it's better than going 5-10 years, all of a sudden for you to walk into a unit when you're trying to turn over and you see this completely blown up. So I love this exit strategy. I love that you were able to debunk some of those myths, Rhett. And well, let's go into some of the markets that you're in, Rhett, because one of the number one questions I get DMs about, I'm sure you do too, is, hey, how do you pick a market and what's considered a good market? Can you shed some light on that and how you advise your coaching clients?
100%. And that is without a doubt the question that I get the most. And it is without question the most loaded question I get, and a question that is the most double-sided. It's a total double-edged sword. And what I tell people, Kent, is it literally, I don't care what market it is. It doesn't matter. I don't care if we're doing this in Alaska, or I don't care if we're doing it in Florida or anywhere in between. It's about where you have the team. Where do we have reliable realtors, management companies, contractors? Where do we have lenders that can write loans? Where do we have insurance companies that are going to insure these houses? And over the last 13 and a half years, I have bought houses in dozens and dozens of cities all across the country. And I'll tell you what, you can buy houses in Flint, Michigan and Saginaw, Michigan and parts of Detroit all day long that are close to turnkey for 30, 40, 50 grand. And there's a reason they're selling for that cheap. You can buy properties in East St. Louis, Missouri and East St. Louis, Illinois, right on the other side of the river all day long for dirt cheap. But guess what? I can't get a reliable contractor or management company to go out to those houses and do work on them, to photograph or show them, because it's too dangerous. We can't get maintenance people to go to those houses after 3 o'clock in the afternoon, really 2:30 in some areas, because they don't want to go into those areas because they don't want to get killed. So it doesn't, the number, when people search what are the cheapest markets, and this is what everybody does, they search what are the cheapest markets to buy housing in the United States, and then the same markets come up and they remain the cheapest because you don't have reliable people that can help you onboard the property and cash flow it. And if we can't onboard it and cash flow it for a long period of time, it's worthless to me. It's going to be a money pit. It's going to be a problem. It's going to cause anxiety and issues. We do not need that. So where I tell people to buy houses is where I have a team that I rely on, that I trust, that I know gets the job done, and that I know can specialize in dealing with people who are investing out of state. Because as an out-of-state investor, you need transparency, you need good communication, you need to understand what you're buying, where you're buying, and when you need something done, it needs to be done quickly. So I tell them to buy in the markets where we can facilitate that. Now, with that being said, we focus in the Southeast. So I have teams all throughout the Southeast. We buy in Tennessee, Kentucky, Mississippi, Arkansas, Alabama, a little bit in Louisiana, not as much. All throughout Ohio, we do the Northeast, we do Pennsylvania, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Vermont, Maine, Massachusetts. So we are all spread out, but we do it because I have teams there, and teams that I trust, and teams that I rely on. And even with that being the case, once you do have that team, Kent, then you have to see if it makes sense. So instead of looking at the numbers and saying, okay, I like these numbers, let's go there, that's backwards. First, where do we have a team? Now, okay, now I have people I can rely on. Now, what do the numbers look like? And that's how we choose our markets.
Man, thank you so much for talking them through that, because I think people, so here's what I do. Every day I go underwrite a deal live, right? Because I realize how people, they don't even know how to look at a deal. But I always tell people, and you explain it way better than I did, to be honest with you, Rhett. I just call it execution risk, which means, hey, what are the chances of your contractor not doing what he said he's going to do and showing up on time like he said he was going to? And what are the chances of things popping up behind the walls? And then all of a sudden your holding cost goes from 3 months to 6 months. And people don't think about these. They assume that the first deal that they get, everything is going to go exactly as planned. And you and I both know it never goes as planned, no matter how great of a team you might have. Now, granted, this is how, and I really want to emphasize this, you guys all have a cheat code now. I don't know if you guys ever play video games, but Rhett is your cheat code. Please use it. Use the cheat code. You can shortcut your way to going through the trials and tribulations of testing a new contractor. Okay, let's see if this person is going to be good. Let's see if this person is going to rip me off. You can skip all those steps because someone has walked that path already for you before. And that's why I wanted to bring Rhett on today. So Rhett, I know you have your own construction company now, but let's just bring it to more of a surface level, because there's so many people listening right now that are a little bit more new. How might they screen for what you might call is a good contractor? And then let's talk about why you eventually had to become and start your own construction company.
So this is where you're going to lose all your money, Kat. This and property management. This is where people get destroyed. And, people get killed not in the way you'd think. Usually they're not getting overcharged. The problem is they're actually getting underquoted. That is the biggest issue that real estate investors face. So what happens is when we walk into a house, and like you said, so I own my own construction company that specializes in getting houses ready for Section 8. I do that because it allows my clients, A, every protection in the world. B, we control every nail that gets banged in a house. We control costs, timelines, inventory, and my clients never have to worry about anything, whether a job is $1,500 to do or whether it's $150,000. We can handle everything, and it's extremely transparent. I'll meet them at the property. We'll walk it with everybody who's going to be working on it. And the more we do, the more we can control, which is the more we can control, the better chance we have of controlling the outcome and making more money. But I digress. So what happens a lot of times is we walk into a house, and it might need $50,000 in work. And we're going to tell you, hey, it needs $50,000 in work. And you can say, okay, that's out of my budget. Or let's back out of the deal and move on to something else, then fantastic, let's do it. If it is good for you and that fits your budget and it fits what we're trying to do, then great, we move forward with it. The day we close on it, we get people over there, we start knocking it out, we get it done in record time. Now, the problem is, and this is where people get killed, in the same market, people call people who maybe aren't licensed, who aren't doing this the right way, who know that they're out of state and they know the oversight's not going to be there. They know the transparency is not going to be there. They know the people are maybe first-time investors or second-time investors. They've never bought in that market before. They walk into that same house and they say, hey, I just walked in. It looks great. It needs $27,000 in work. And then what happens is they get the bid, of course. They start working on it. And one of two things happens. Number one, they use up that $27,000 in the first 2 weeks and they say, hey, I misquoted it. I need another $27,000. And the people say, oh, well, what am I going to do? I'm already into it for $27,000. I don't know what's been done. I don't know what you have done, what you haven't done. I don't have anybody there to call. What do I do? And they have to pay. So what happens is they go ahead and they pay. And then they pay another $27,000. Now they're into it for $54,000. They get another phone call. Hey, I made a mistake. We ran into this. I need another $15,000. And then at that point, you're already in it for 54. What you have no choice. You have to pay another 15. They've got you. So that's a huge issue. And that happens all the time. The second problem with that is they do the $27,000 in work. You never hear from them again. Someone else shows up and realizes no work was done. And it's just a quick money grab and it's lower. So you choose them, but then they take the money and they run. And people listening to this right now probably say, well, I don't send any money until I have pictures. Well, guess what? It's pretty easy to go to another house and take pictures of what a crawl space looks like and what plumbing and electrical look like when you don't know it well enough to be able to go down and verify that that's actually your property. So we see it and we saw it too often. And I've been a victim of it myself, to where you get the wrong pictures, you think things are done the right way, you send money and you get duped. But believe it or not, Kent, there is another way that people get murdered in construction. And it's before a nail is even banged. And it's the one thing that we are crazy about with my clients and how we incentivize and mitigate against risk significantly. I said incentivize, I meant insulate against risk as best as possible. And that's the preliminary quote. The preliminary quote, the preliminary estimate is so unbelievably important, because when we go to that house and you make your decision based on the $50,000 quote, sometimes what happens is you bring out that guy who's not ethically, morally a good contractor. He quotes you $27,000, and then you buy the house and you have run numbers on the $27K. and you close on it, you call that contractor and he's not answering your phone because maybe he was not even a contractor to begin with, or he just, doesn't want to do the work or doesn't have time for it, or realizes that, he underquoted it so badly. And then you call another contractor and they come in and say, hey, you need 50 or it needs 60 grand. And then you call someone else and they say, yeah, you're looking at 55, 60,000 for this. Well, now you've already bought a house. You budgeted 27,000. Now your numbers aren't going to work at 50. Now your numbers don't work at 55, 60,000. So you didn't even have a nail banged. You didn't even send a penny and you're already underwater because you didn't have licensed electricians come and see what it needed. You didn't have people look at the box. You didn't have licensed plumbers crawl under the house or open up the flooring in the bathroom to see what was underneath. You didn't have people looking in the broken sheetrock to see if the house had been coppered or if all the PEX lines or all of the old piping had been stolen. So all of these things go into that initial inspection. And if you don't have a company or a person that you trust doing not only the actual construction work, but the estimates, I can guarantee you're going to lose money.
Man, we don't share all this stuff to scare everybody that's listening, but this is the unfortunate reality of real estate investing. And for you to go in here naive and think everything is going to just be unicorns and rainbows, that's not true. So Rhett, we just talked a lot about all the ways you can sort of lose money with contractors. Is that why you decided to start your own construction company? Tell us a little bit more about your strategic thinking behind, like, hey, why did you have to do that? Was it just out of sheer necessity?
No. So, the contractors that I've been using in my program for clients of mine have been incredible. They've done a great job. They're extremely fast. They're extremely honest. They're good people and they're great. The reason I wanted to bring everything in-house and run it is because costs are going up. And what we can do that's a little bit different when I have more control over items and inventory, I can buy things in really big bulk. So flooring, fixtures, you name it, we can buy it in bulk, paint, lumber. And what that does is it brings down the cost so significantly that then we can pass that on to clients. So I don't want my clients paying retail construction rates. We do so much work and we do so many units that they shouldn't have to. So I want my clients to be able to actually build big portfolios. And in order to do that, they have to be able to, they can't get wiped out on one rehab. We need to keep costs low so they can buy more and more and more. Now that I own the company, I can control the margin. I can control the costs. So I can make less and bring down costs less so that then they pay less. So then they have more money to buy more. But what it also does, Kent, is it allows me to control the quality. And that's extremely important too. So now when we do a project and a maintenance issue comes up 3 months later or 4 months later, we can eat that because that person already paid for it. I have a full itemized scope of everything that went into that unit. Now we can pay for that. So it then gives us more maneuverability when things pop up that we can help our clients even further and hold us accountable, which at the end of the day, this is about my clients making money. I want to make sure that they get the best experience possible and they're not overspending or they're not getting taken advantage of by construction companies and by management companies. So the more that we can control on a construction front, on a management or a maintenance front, we do, and then we can make a better return on our investment.
I love how you're operating that business because it's no small feat to manage a construction business with so many different personalities. First and foremost, lots of different personalities and lots of different projects. It almost makes it a little hard to standardize, but I love the economies of scale that you have been able to achieve in your business, but also for your clients. And this is what I mean by cheat code, guys. It's one, you get someone that actually cares about their reputation. I will never do any business with anybody that does not do what they say they're going to do and also continues to deliver for his clients like Rhett is doing today. And he's giving away all the game today, all of it. And I really hope everybody can rewind that piece of this conversation and really listen to how he looks at his contracting business, how he's managing his business, because if you ask these same questions to whatever contractor that you're using for your own rehabs, I bet they might not have as good of answers for you. And you should really hold them to a higher standard because it's your investment, it's your property, and most importantly, putting someone into that home that's going to live there with their family. Don't take that responsibility lightly. Now, when it comes to the life of the tenant, obviously property management is so important, Rhett. What have you seen in terms of, let's just call it an aptitude of property management companies when it comes to the Section 8 program? Where do you see property management companies typically failing or not understanding the implications of the program, and what do they make mistakes so that the audience listening today can pay a little bit more attention to, at least when they're selecting a property management company, what should they be looking for to make sure that they're hiring the right folks?
Yeah. And Kent, property management is a thankless business. Property management, you don't make a lot of money. I mean, you're making 10% of the gross rent per month. So on a unit that's renting for $1,200 a month, a Section 8 management company is charging $120 to manage that unit. Not a lot of money. And with Section 8, you are dealing with a lot. I mean, you're dealing with tenants who are in between homes, who usually are coming from bad situations, who have been thrown around, who go from housing project to housing project. They keep getting moved around. Maybe they came from a slumlord's house before you. So you're dealing with baggage related to that. You're dealing with Section 8 caseworkers. You're dealing with Section 8 inspectors. It's a lot of work. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of management companies, they don't even want to touch Section 8. You start saying Section 8, they say, yeah, you know what? Not worth our time. We don't want to do it. So number one, finding a management company that wants to do Section 8 is difficult. Finding a management company that picks up the phone and deals with the Section 8 tenants and talks to them and helps them is huge. And the management companies we use, depending on what market my clients get started in, I have management companies that are exclusive only to my clients. So you can't even find them. You can't even Google them. They don't even exist on the internet. They are solely only usable by clients of mine. And I do that because I want to make sure that my clients get the best treatment. And when they pick up the phone, they have a problem, or they send an email, someone gets back to them in a relatively timely manner. Section 8 management is its own business. And what I mean by that is it's different than normal property management. There are different protocols you have to follow. There are things that you have to do very, very differently than normal property management. The timelines are way different. You have constant communication with caseworkers and inspectors that then push timelines out. And if you don't have a management company that's patient, that's organized, and that has a high care level for these people, you have a bad management company. And one thing that the management companies that we use, they're moral, they're ethical, they're good people. Our values align. I had one of our management companies, we had a family. It was a single mother of 5 kids. Every kid was under 6 years old. They were porting, it's called porting, porting, which means when you have a Section 8 voucher in another state and you bring it to a different state, it's called a port. So they were porting from Georgia, in this instance, to Alabama, and they were going to move into one of our houses. So they ported, and their move-in date, we couldn't get an inspection for 2 weeks. And then once the inspections pass with Section 8, we still have to get that lease signed off on, and we still need the HAP agreement, or the housing assistance package or packet. So that takes some time. And in the meantime, the woman said, no worries, we're just going to wait. We'll be here. And when it's ready, just call us. Well, after about 2 weeks, it got inspected. Our management company called her and said, hey, got inspected. We're just waiting on the HAP agreement, and it should be another 2 weeks or so. How are you doing? She's like, we're doing fantastic. We can't wait to get in the house. And the management company said, well, where have you been staying? And she said, oh, we are under the bridge right on Fifth Street, where it connects with Maple Street. And she was like, what? This woman had moved here. They were living in boxes underneath a bridge, kind of on the side of a bridge, and they were just waiting for this unit to get occupied. And this was years ago. And since that happened, we've totally changed. Now it's the first question we ask is, where are you living right now? And if we have to put someone up in a hotel for a couple of weeks, we will. We don't care to. Doesn't matter to us. We're not fighting for the last nickel on the table. So if we have to put someone up in a hotel, if we have to move somebody into one of our units or one of my personal units, for $5 a month until they're ready to move into their unit, we'll do it. So it's doing this with the right management company is extremely, extremely important for more reasons other than just their ability to operate.
Man, what a story. What a story, because this conversation might go into a little bit about raising capital, but I always tell investors that come to me and I say, hey, and full disclosure, this is not a solicitation for any investments. It's not investment advice for everybody's listening. But I tell them, hey, if you're looking for the highest return on your money, I am not your guy. Because just like what Rhett said, we take care of other people first. This is a human business, taking care of people's livelihoods, and literally lives are at stake, literally, because they could be sleeping under a bridge in cardboard boxes with 5 other kids. And I, as a dad now of a 2-year-old daughter, that's something I would never be able to witness and not do something about it. So I want to go back to the point you made, Rhett, about it's all about getting sometimes just your first rental, because when you have that first rental, you have that proof of concept. And then now you can go out and tell people, one, what you're doing, that you've done it before, that you have a team, and then most importantly, the impact and the story of the people that you're able to help. Do you think that might help you raise some capital? Because the excuse should no longer be, I have no money. If you're good and you are seriously and your intention are pure about helping people, there will be people that will come out, they will resonate with you, they will relate to you. And I go back to the same comment you made earlier, Rhett, about, hey, if he's so successful, why is he doing all this stuff? Man, they just don't understand that we get so much fulfillment from the emotional income. And most importantly, I get to set an example for my daughter, because she gets to see that, hey, you can help people and make money. And there's no better lesson I want to leave her with by the time my time comes. So, Brad, thank you for going through and sharing that story, because I think it shows that property management companies need to look at people, not just as a case file that they need to fill in a property.
Yeah. And Kent, when it comes to the stories, I could tell you stories that would make you cry. I mean, I've been doing this long enough, and some of the properties and some of the things that we run into are so bad. Like being based in Nashville, I go to all these markets. I mean, I'm in these markets weekly where my clients are doing large construction. I need to be on that, and I want to be on it. I want to be extremely involved. So I'm constantly seeing these. And for me, selfishly, I get a ton out of this because I'm the one that gets to meet the tenants, and I see what the house looked like before. I see what it looks like during, and then I see what it looks like afterwards when it's done. And when the person moves in and their kids are running through the house like crazy, because they just moved from a 400 square foot 1-bedroom with their grandparents sleeping on the floor and 7 people on the inside. And now they have their own bedroom for the first time in their life. My clients don't get to experience that. I get to see it. I get to be there and get to be a part of that and have such an active role in that from start to finish. So selfishly, I love that. I think that's pretty incredible. With that being said, it doesn't get any easier seeing some of the situations that people stay in. And, I go to these places that are around here, and they might be a 2-3 hour drive away, right? And I have a car service pick me up at my house at 5 a.m. in a brand new Suburban, right? And I get in there with a couple people that work for me, and we drive down and we stop and we eat, 4-star, 5-star lunch, and we have a 5-star dinner on the way back. And I always tell people who want to come with me and see what this is like. I always tell them the same thing. And I tell it to myself too. But when we're driving out of there at night and we just looked at 50 houses or 30 houses, 40 houses, whatever it was, between drive-bys and walking through and doing scopes, when we're driving back after literally a 15, 16-hour day, and we just went to houses where there's no plumbing and people flush the toilet and it just goes into the bottom underneath, and there's 5 kids running around the house who are in soiled diapers because they can't afford anything. And I have clients that are looking to buy those houses. So we're doing walkthroughs and we're talking to people who have no roof on their house and water's pouring in and there's mold, black mold growing on the walls and on the ceilings. And I tell the people I'm with, I say, listen, we're leaving here. We're driving out of here in a $100,000 car. We're going to stop and have a $600 dinner. Just remember, those people that we just left are still in that situation. You're going to go home tonight. You're going to shower. You're going to get in your pajamas. You're going to turn on your 60-inch plasma screen TV and get in a nice clean bed and turn the air conditioning on or turn the heat on. And those people that we just left, they're not. They're going to wake up tomorrow and they're still going to be in that crappy situation. And they're going to live in that crap situation every single day until someone comes in there and helps them. And that for me is extremely powerful because it keeps me grounded. And one of the reasons, Kent, why you don't see a lot of flashy stuff on my Instagram and on my TikTok and on my YouTube is because this is not flashy. You know what I mean? It isn't. And when I go to these situations, I don't want to ever feel like I'm exploiting people. And listen, you make money doing this, absolutely, but we do it the right way. And if it costs us a little more to do it the right way, we're going to. And if you don't want to spend a little extra money to do it right, I'm not going to work with you. And I've fired plenty of clients over the last couple of years because they turn into slumlords. And it's sad because you get into this with the mindset of, I want to help people. And then the bottom dollar takes over. And that's okay. Do it on your own, but I'm not going to be a part of it. And driving out of these cities at night and just thinking about what we saw that day. And I always ask people I go with, whether I've been to these cities with them 50 times or whether it's their first time, I say, what did you learn? What was your takeaway from today? And a lot of times I hear the same thing from new people. It's, wow, I used to think that if you worked hard enough, you could get out of any situation. And now I don't feel that way, because even if I was in that situation, I don't know if I ever would have got out of it, because there's a lot of stuff going against you. And I use that as motivation all the time to make sure that we're providing quality products for people to move into, to make sure that these things work, to make sure that they're nice, and to make sure that the people who move into them get a legitimate shot to better their lives.
The most important line you just said was getting the legitimate shot to change their lives. I grew up in an apartment building, and you know where I lived. But back then, still tons of gangs. I literally could watch a gang fight across the street from the window in my apartment building at the elementary school, because people get jumped into gangs all the time. I've gotten robbed across the street from right in front of the YMCA. Literally gotten robbed right in front of it. And I was only in 7th grade. And I share that story because people underestimate how much work it is to break out of that social class, whatever you want to call it. And in my apartment building, I'm probably one of 2 people that I know of today that actually decided to go on and be an entrepreneur. Everybody else just got a job, but everybody else had an equal chance to at least have a safe roof over their head so that they did not have to worry about their safety in that apartment building. Did things happen? Did my mom get robbed in elevators? Sure, she did. But eventually it got better. And eventually we got the same hope and the same opportunity to say, hey, I can do better. I can help more people, because I share the story because I want to inspire the people. You're not trying to change every single person's life in every single home. What you're doing is you're giving that kid that one chance to get out and make a profound impact on the world and become positive contributing members of society. And I'm so thankful. Right now, I'm on a journey to go find a guy that built my apartment building, because I want to thank him, because without him, I would have never started this podcast. I would have never met someone like you, Rhett, so that we can go on and impact thousands, if not millions of people directly or indirectly. And that's what's so powerful about this. And this is why you and I, we're attracting the right people. We're letting the people that want to make a difference positively actually stick around us, because we just want to see everybody win as long as they got a good heart and they're prioritizing the right things.
Totally agree.
I love that, man. Hey, Rhett, well, I know we just went down this big tangent, and man, that was so powerful. Thank you for that. And I want to hit upon a little bit of piece where it comes to screening tenants. We talked about all the people that we want to help, but how do we make sure that we are screening for the right tenants and actually putting the right people that are going to take care of our homes? Do you do that yourself? Do you have the property manager take care of that? Can you shed some light on that piece?
Yeah. When it comes to tenant vetting, this is what management companies do. They sit all day and they look at applications. I don't. I'm not a professional tenant vetter. And neither are my clients who have never owned real estate before, or maybe they've owned 5 or 10 or 20 or 100 units. It doesn't matter. They're real estate investors. And that's what I am. And my job is not to sit and look at criminal background histories and credit reports and business history reports and reference lists. That's what management companies get paid for. Let them choose the right tenants. If you trust the management company, you should trust them to choose the right tenants. Now, when it comes to vetting, we vet Section 8 tenants the same way that we do with a normal cash tenant. And I would like to tell you straight up, Kent, I've had more issues with cash tenants over the last almost 15 years than Section 8 tenants by about 20 times. So we have far less issues with Section 8 tenants. And we look at them just like we're looking at a cash tenant. We look at their income. We look at their criminal background histories. We look at their rent histories. We call their prior landlords. We meet them in person. We look at their credit scores. Now, we hold things in a little bit different of weight. And what I mean by that is, for instance, a credit score of someone that might be moving into one of our brand new luxury apartments might need a 700 credit score plus. Someone who's moving into one of our Section 8 units, they don't need a 700 credit score. We don't put as much weight on credit scores. We don't care about that. But someone who has a violent criminal background or any kind of criminal history, they're not moving in. Whether they are Section 8 or not Section 8, they are not moving in. Now, keep in mind, you cannot be a felon and be in the Section 8 program. That's important to know. Now, with that being said, we are we put a ton of time and attention into the vetting process. And one of the best things we do is every tenant that moves into one of our units, we meet those tenants face to face. So our management company can meet them face to face. They can get a read on them that is outside of just looking at them on a piece of paper. And this is one of the best ways to find the right tenant. You got to meet them. I think the people out there who say you need to go look at their houses and see how they currently live, whoever made that up to begin with has never been a landlord or is definitely not an attorney, because of the amount of liability that opens you up to, going to someone's house, looking through the house, and then saying, no, you're not moving into my house. We won't even get into the legality of that, but we meet them in person and we see them. And that is why our rates of good tenants and the incident rates we have are extremely low when it comes to damage and people trashing units, because we're able to vet people. We talk to their prior landlords. We get a good feel for them before we accept them. Now, this is also one of the reasons why a lot of these cities and states that are moving towards laws where they don't want you to see the tenant, where you're supposed to make a decision solely based on looking at them on a piece of paper. And those are the worst ways for us to choose tenants. Now, you look at some states and they are moving to a 100% completely blind application process. And they think that this is the new progressive way to find tenants, because you can't see color, you can't see gender, but guess what? You can't see the best tenant either, because you're capped. You're limited by what you can ask, by meeting these people in person, by asking them if they're on Section 8 or not. That's a violation. And some of these states are going so far to where you have to grade out. Basically, this blind system gives people points based on what is in their application. So if their credit score is 600, 700, it's 2 points. If it's 500, 600, it's 1 point. If they have violent credit history or violent criminal history, it's 0 points. If they don't, it's 1 point. If they turn in the application first, it's 2 points. If they turn it in second, it's 1 point. And then legally, you have to choose the person with the highest score. And what that does is it doesn't guarantee you the tenant that you want for that unit. And for instance, if you look at us, we've done thousands of these. And we know exactly who to put in our units that are going to have the lowest incident rates based on their demographics, based on what we have seen doing this hundreds and thousands of times. So we use that data to make the right decisions to put people who need these units in the units. And so we can make sure that we capitalize the best on our investment. You're handcuffing that, and you're hurting a lot of vulnerable people, because you're not allowing us to go after Section 8 vouchers. You're saying, hey, you have to choose someone that scores the highest. And all that's doing at the end of the day is hurting the person that is applying for the unit.
I just can't believe that they think like that. I understand both sides of the equation and both thought processes. But if we really want to solve this affordable housing problem, you got to make it sustainable, because if there's no margin, there's no mission at the end of the day. And if you don't take care of the people and find the right people, you're going to have everybody that might have just tried Section 8 one time or try to provide a great home for a great family one time. And because you didn't let them do or go above and beyond and helping them make sure that they're finding the folks that are going to take care of the units, they're going to exit the program and you will likely never get them back. Maybe this is a good time to ask you, Rhett, hey, why do you think affordable housing, particularly the lack of supply of affordable housing, is like so hard to solve for? You have any thoughts on that? You have so much experience, so I thought I really would love to hear your opinion.
There's a couple reasons. Number one is affordability of property. And as inflation has gone up, as the real estate market has gone crazy, as supply has gone down, property values have gone up. When rates went down, of course, property values skyrocket. And then what happens is Section 8 hasn't caught up to market rent in so many cities that it doesn't make sense to rent to a Section 8 tenant. So landlords aren't incentivized. If I can rent my unit out here in Nashville for $6,000 or $7,000 a month to a cash tenant, of someone who just moved here because they're working at Oracle, or they moved here because they're a doctor working at Vanderbilt Hospital. I'm going to rent to them. Why would I want to rent to a Section 8 tenant when Nashville's only going to pay me $2,900? I can get $7,000, right? So if you want to create more private sector housing for these people, you have to incentivize them to do it. And that's why in some of these markets, the numbers work. And that's why we're able to create these units. Because at the end of the day, and you know this, Kent, it works because the numbers work. And if the numbers didn't work, people are not going to be doing this. So we have to make sure that the government continues to increase what they're going to be paying landlords for these units. That's one reason. The other reason is it has to be funded. And they have to continue, and when I say they, I mean the federal government, they have to continue to increase the amount of money that they're budgeting through Congress for the Housing Choice Voucher Program. Because when they start cutting budgets, what they're doing is they are just cutting money that is going into the hands of these tenants. And when the voucher amounts go down, so do the units. The landlords have to make money. It reiterates that first point, but it's one and the same. So the government has to continue to keep rents high because otherwise it's not going to make sense for landlords. And that's why you see not a ton of units in a bunch of different markets. But that's only one part of it. Another part of it is something that you and I know very, very, very in depth, and that's development, Kent. And when you have places like California, you have places like where you grew up and I grew up in Massachusetts, that are going so progressively in the wrong way that what it does is it makes it so hard to build. You have everybody wants to put their hand in your pocket. There are so many laws that make it unprofitable to build. And when you do that, all you do is you disincentivize development. And you disincentivize builders from building new units because they can't make money. And because building something in Los Angeles is going to take you 6 years, that is a huge problem. Because what it does, if you're not putting new units on market, the existing units on market stay at an extremely high price. And when they're at an extremely high price, you have issues. Another problem that you face in New York and Massachusetts and California is rent control. And rent control is going to significantly limit a landlord's ability to move rent up. Well, what happens when you can't move rent up, Kent? You can't make units nicer. So when you have all these people, and it's my favorite group of people, it's the people who are very, very, very progressive, who say, well, you're a slumlord, you need to make the unit nicer. And in the same breath, they say, well, you need to accept more government tenants. And in the same time, they say, rent control, rent control, rent control. Well, how economically do they want that to work? If you put a government tenant in your unit or a Section 8 tenant in your unit, you need to make sure that that unit is nice. How do you make it nice? You have to make sure that you're making enough money to pay the debt on the property. And so you make money, so you're incentivized to do it, but also so you can upkeep it. When you create a ceiling for what you can charge, all you're doing is telling a landlord, hey, we're not paying you anymore, so leave it how it is. There's no incentive for you to update it or make it any nicer because you're never going to make any more money. So why would you want to put any more money into it? So the biggest problem I see, Kent, and I don't think you were expecting a 15-minute answer when you asked me that question, but the people making the decisions are never the ones who get their hands dirty. They're never the ones that are business minded. A lot of our elected officials have no clue what's going on with housing, what goes on with construction, and 99 out of 100 of them have no idea how economics work. And when you do understand how the trickle down and the waterfall effect, when you make one decision at the political level and at the legal level, how that flows down and affects the people at the bottom, well, who's at the bottom? Our Section 8 tenants. And they're the ones that get killed, not directly, but as an indirect consequence of a lot of these terrible things that are happening at the political and at the legal level.
I tell people it's just math. And if the equation does not balance, it doesn't work. And I think the intentions of folks might be right. But when it comes down to what really is happening, you have to understand it just all has to work out. You have to make everybody, you have to look for win-win-win solutions instead of thinking like, we have to do this because I got to get the votes for this. That's not the right approach. You got to figure out how to find a way where everybody wins, from the landlord, the government, and the tenant, because we cannot perpetuate the cycle of poverty by keeping people in a similar condition that might not allow them to have the opportunity that we talked about earlier, to thrive, to have an option, to at least choose a different environment or a different path so that they can get out of the situation that they're currently in. So I loved your explanation, right? Because it goes so much beyond just government incentives. It's mindset, it's the environment that we're creating, and more importantly, it's also the income, right? Because there's two sides to that equation of affordability. Yeah, there's housing costs, but what are we doing to increase the incomes and provide more opportunities for those folks so they can have a prosperous life? So, man, I have probably just one more question for you, Rhett, because I get this question all the time as well. Do you recommend people, for Section 8 at least, pursuing multifamily or single families? What has been your experience with your clients so far in your portfolio?
It's a great question. And I get it almost every day. And it's unequivocally single family. And a lot of people say to me, Rhett, well, why would I want to buy 10 single family homes and instead of buying one 10-unit apartment? I can give you a ton of answers, and I'll give you the most important answers. But number one, you are getting paid with Section 8 based on the bedrooms. So we can buy a single family home, 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom, 5-bedroom. We can buy those all day long. We're getting paid on the bedroom. So we're going to make more money on a 3, 4, or 5-bedroom. How many 10-unit apartments do you know of that have 3, 4, and 5-bedroom units? Not many, right? So it doesn't make sense on a per door acquisition cost. That's number one. When you buy a multifamily building, most of the time you're paying separately for some of the utilities, and you're paying for landscape, and you're paying for trash removal and a dumpster. A lot of units that we would buy on a multifamily level are going to be metered individually for electric, but not for water or gas. If it's not individually metered, you have to pay for it as the landlord. So if on a single family home, a single family home is metered independently for electrical, water, and gas, and through the Section 8 housing voucher program, the tenant pays for the landscape, and the trash is city. So you're talking about eliminating almost 5 different expenses on a single family level than you would on a multifamily. Thirdly, on a multifamily property that people do not think about, and this is a funny one because people don't really understand it, and you'd never think about it unless you've owned a lot of multifamily buildings. But when you do a multifamily, and we'll use the 10-unit as our kind of as our example throughout this whole thing, you're creating a little microcosm world in that 10-unit. So you have to find 10 tenants that are going to get along living on top of each other. And if you go for the wrong kinds of tenants that are age-wise not right or don't fit in well, you're going to have issues. And when I first started doing this, I was like, you know what? I've got a bunch of single families. I'm going to try some multifamilies. And I put people in units. I put a lot of single people in these units, in these multifamilies, because single people are the ones that are going to live in a 1-bedroom, right? Or you'll have a husband, wife, or boyfriend, girlfriend move into a 2-bedroom and have a guest room, or a single mother with 1 kid and she's in one room and he's in the other, or a single dad in one, right? Those are the only people that are moving in to 2-bedroom or 1-bedroom apartments. And what you realize is what humans do. They start messing around with each other, and then you have domestic issues. And it's bad. That's problem. And what happens is when you start having domestic issues in some of these apartment buildings, people move. And when people move, you have higher turnover. So it's not the best situation. If you can do single families, I always recommend single families. But then lastly, and not a lot of people think about any of this, Kent, which is why it's such a great question. But lastly, let's think about the exit strategy. You have a 10-unit apartment building and you're selling it for $1 million. How many buyers do you have for that? Not a lot. There's not a lot of mom and pops that can come in and buy $1 million apartment building with a commercial loan or a DSCR loan or a jumbo conventional loan that can put down in today's environment on a commercial multifamily building. You got to put down 30% or more. So they're putting down 35%. They're cutting a check for $350,000 to buy $1 million building at 8.5% commercial debt. That's tough, right? If I have 10 single family homes, How many people then can buy one house for $100,000 using a Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac loan or using a conventional loan? Your buyer pool just went up by probably 1,000 times. So the exit is much easier on single family homes that you're selling individually than on multifamily. Now, with that being said, if you want to scale units faster and you want to try it, doing multifamily is good. It's just different and it's not for everybody.
I love that answer. And I think you made the perfect comment about it's a community that you're building there, and that really significantly affects the livelihoods of everybody in the community. So, for example, we don't look for anything under 100 units on the multifamily side, because anything under 100 units, you can't really afford to have an on-site property manager that can help and provide supportive services. We had a 330 unit apartment complex that was affordable. And in order to support those folks, we had new nonprofits coming in every month or two to provide job training, interview training, resume building, supportive services. If you're really trying to help folks, you need an economy of scale to really provide those supportive services. And also so that those residents will tell their friends like, hey, they really care about us here. Come live here. Not only will that keep your occupants low, but when people see that you're truly trying to help them, they will probably take better care of your property. They will probably be your eyes on the ground, and they will have a level of pride living in that community. So really, really think about what you're creating, especially if you're pursuing a multi-family environment. Please think about what you're creating and the environment you're creating. It's not just you throw somebody into a unit and just hope that it cash flows. Please, this is a human business. And I'm so glad, Rhett, that you have come on today and you have shared so much value, so much wisdom, man. I'm so excited to be working with you at some point in the future, Rhett. I already know it's going to happen, but for people that want to work with you, Rhett, and they want to find out more about you, where can they find out more about you?
So they can go to my website, www.section8coaching.com. They can check me out on YouTube, Rhett Wisman, the Section 8 guy, and get all the info that they need there. And we can get this thing going whenever.
Man, I can't wait. So, Rhett, I can't wait to maybe do a single family home with you and your coaching program. I'd love to kind of come back on here and just go through a case study, walk people through like what the whole experience was like. I think that'd be really valuable. And I know you're doing some stuff on the workforce housing and development side. So I can't wait to bring you and your partners to come on, because I think there's a whole nother world that people can impact, that people can learn about from you. And I can't wait to talk about that a little bit more with you, man.
Love it, brother. Well, I appreciate you having me on and can't wait to come on again soon.
All right. And we are out.